Good morning, good morning. It's great to see you. I am so excited to be together. When we started thinking about this idea, man, it's been several months ago, my initial thought was, I'm going to reach out to Chris. Chris knows what he's doing, and have him share with us just how we can begin to get ready for going home or how to finish well. And so when he said yes, I was super excited. And so he's here. Yeah, and yes, the font on many of your pieces of paper is very small. Okay, that's something I should have observed and tried to fix, but we have magnifying glasses, right? And my glasses kind of work, and it'll be up on the screen, so you can almost
Not
see
sure
it well.
It's any better on the screen.
Okay, all right, okay. So anyhow, let me pray for us, and then I'll turn stuff over to Chris. Father, just thank you for the chance for us to get together this morning and really consider this really important question. Are we ready? And are we prepared? And have we prepared our family for our going home to be with you? So I pray, Father, that you would just lead and guide us this morning. Use Chris's words to encourage us and help get us ready. Because, Lord, we do look forward to eternity with you. But we want to be ready. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Amen. Okay.
Amen.
That might have sounded weird. I don't know. Okay, anyhow.
That was perfect, Jeff. Okay. Thanks. Well, thank you guys for being here. What a privilege. And what a turnout. Thought it was maybe for the baked goods, but there's no snacks. Yeah, I know. What's up with that? At least there's coffee. My name's Chris Scotchler. I've been at the church here for about 16 years. I've been serving as a trustee for the last 10, overseeing all the financial matters of the church. Church is doing a great job managing the finances and using those to advance the kingdom here in Bothell and around the world. Again, it's a privilege to be here with you guys. I'm a financial advisor. It's my profession. I've been doing that this is my 18th year with Ronald Blue Trust, and I also get to manage the office. We're a national trust company, the only Christian national trust company. We serve predominantly high net worth Christians that desire to be good stewards with the resources, but need wisdom to help them do that. So we look to God's word for helping them to make wise decisions with money. Today is a little different. Today, we're actually thinking more about where are we headed, and are we ready, and is our family ready for us to leave? This is, sorry, I knew this was going to be hard. A little emotional. The last time I was in this room was my wife's memorial. And sat right down here, actually, with my two daughters. They get to come here pretty frequently, weekly, actually, and so probably don't have quite as hard of a time as I do, but this is personal, and I did just go through this and experience this, and what a blessing that my wife and I had taken the time to get her ready for her promotion. So how many of you have been through an experience like that, of losing a loved one? Most. Yeah. During a profoundly emotional experience, we must additionally cope with the practical problems that arise when someone close to us dies. Despite the paralysis that often comes with a loved one's death, there's immediate steps that our closest surviving relatives, usually the spouse, have to deal with in order to ensure financial stability for the family. This workshop is meant to help you prepare for your eventual promotion to heaven and grant your loved ones more quality family time and time to grieve their loss. We found that our clients have greater peace knowing that their executors are prepared. That was me in this case with my wife. The important factors have been communicated and that their specific wishes are being carried out. So we've created a process to provide both flexibility and professional direction if that's required, that we're going to take a look at today. So most people will sacrifice the important for the urgent. Let me say that again. Most people will sacrifice the important for the urgent, and that's why we're taking the time today. Sadly, less than 50% of people have actually taken the time to complete a will. And that's not what we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about that the next time if you guys invite me back if I do okay today. In thinking not about the legal side of it and the tools, but more the decisions about what to do with these resources that God's given you. Are there heirs that you're going to pass them to? Do you want to leave them to some to charity? If money's going to heirs, are they prepared? How much is enough, or how much is too much for them? And so that's going to be the next class, a little promo. So, are your wills current? Many people wrote their wills years ago and forget what's in them. Many life situations have also changed. I've had to recently update my wills because of a loss of a loved one. Kids that get launched. Now how many of you still have a guardian in your wills for your kids and they're now 40 years old? Many times people move between states and forget that estate laws are actually specific to the state that you live in. So if you've recently moved to Washington, I don't know why you would want to, but seems like more people are leaving. But if you do move to another state, Idaho, Arizona, and Texas, the estate laws are going to be different, and so you'll want to update your wills at that point. Estate laws change. The federal government's been trying to change the estate laws for several years. Thankfully, they haven't been able to yet. And unfortunately, Washington still hasn't changed their estate laws. So because of that, the estate exclusion for Washington is only about $2.2 million per person. It's even less than that in Oregon. If you came from Oregon, it's only $1 million that you get to exclude from estate tax. The federal, most people don't have to worry about it. It's fairly high. But because of that, you do want to take the time to update your wills, taking that into consideration. Sometimes heirs, the people that are going to receive the money, some may need more financial help than others. If you've got one kid that's struggling and one kid that's really successful, Ron Blue, the founder of Ronald Blue and Company, would often say that you want to love your children equally, but treat them uniquely, because God treats each of us uniquely. Charitable giving may not be included in your wills. If you want to leave something to Canyon Hills or to your other favorite charities, you may want to consider naming a charity in your will. Another option is to name a charity as a beneficiary of your IRA. If you want to eliminate all taxes going to the government, thankfully we don't get in all the government we pay for, but if you do want to try to eliminate even income tax going to the government, the IRA a lot of times can be a good asset to leave to charity. Your heirs still have to pay income tax when they receive that, and charities don't. And then we do recommend reviewing wills every 5 years, replacing them every 10 years. The replacing them every 10 years, and most people won't do this, but it reduces the risk that the will is contested if you do have family members that end up fighting over your estate after you're gone. If you've updated your will relatively recently, then that's going to reduce that risk, that there are problems with that settlement process. And then it's just good old-fashioned stewardship to make sure you're taking a look at it. Estate settlement considerations. So some things to consider after you're gone and your executor or personal representative is now responsible for settling your estate. Should you use a trust or a will? Just show of hands, how many people have a living trust? Few. How many have completed their wills? Okay, great. Yeah. Well, just really briefly, wills are widely used, generally less expensive to get set up, but can be more expensive and time-consuming after you're gone to settle your estate. And they're also, and mostly because it's required to go through the probate process, which is a public process. Sometimes people don't want their estates shared publicly, but the probate process is public. And so if that matters to you, then considering a trust. The trusts are easier and less costly to settle after you're gone, but they are more expensive and more time-consuming to get set up. So it's really when do you want that done? Do you want to do that before it happens, before you're gone, or after you're gone? The estate settlement can be a complex process. We encourage our clients to consider using a corporate trustee, and it's actually the reason that we became a trust company. It's only been about 5 years since we became a trust company. It was really for the benefit of our clients, wanting to be able to serve them and their families at a really critical time of passing that wealth from one generation to the next. And wouldn't it be great if they had somebody that shared their values that could walk with their family members as they're settling the estate? So a corporate trustee can be a little less personal. That's why we set it up so that the advisor, the client's personal advisors, actively involved with the family members through that transition. You do want to keep in mind when you are picking the executor or trustee that it can be a pretty steep learning curve. Most people haven't done it. They might do it once in their lifetime, and I still haven't met a person that said, yeah, sign me up. I want to do it again. It takes a lot of time, and it can be complicated because they have to sell assets, they have to go through the court process, they have to file a whole bunch of stuff that they've never filed before and never dealt with before. I got to admit, even though I do this for a living, I don't settle estates every day. I'm more on the planning side of things and managing investments. But when it comes to settling my wife's estate, it was a pain in the neck. It took way more time than I expected it to, and was more complicated than I anticipated. And it wasn't even a complicated process. It was a couple of forms that we had to get filled out correctly, get to the right places correctly to get it settled. But still, extremely time consuming. So, do your family members have time? Does your executor or personal representative have time? They may have the expertise. I have a lot of clients that will choose a son or daughter that's the most responsible, typically the most successful, also the busiest. So, yeah, that's something to keep in mind. When you do pick a corporate trustee or executor, they handle all of that. They're going to handle selling the assets, filing the estate tax returns, distributing the assets. That can be a tricky issue with family members. We work with family members that are on second marriages too, and now have blended families. And now you've got family members that are fighting over the estate. And there's a lot of emotion there in that. Even though we hope there wouldn't be, it's inevitable that unfortunately money is just that. It can create a lot of conflict. So bringing a third party independent who has their best interest in mind is, again, the reason that we got into the business. Let's see. Let's go on to the next one. So the homegoing planning that's on your table in front of you is a process. And it's not something that you're going to complete once and file away. In fact, Lisa's got copies, digital copies. So if you want to fill this out digitally, we can email you a copy of it, as well as to take it and pass it around. Share it with your loved ones. My wife was 52 when she passed. And so it's one of those things, unfortunately, colon cancer is hitting people younger and younger. And so even if it's passing it along to your kids, hopefully not your grandkids, but kids definitely can benefit from taking the time to fill this out. And it may not be critical to complete it immediately. It will just help to develop some organization so that others can step in when necessary. You can also use, I mentioned using the document with other family members. And definitely you want to take this and hand this to the person that's going to be your executor or your personal representative, or at least let them know where it is. Not every item is going to be necessary when we go through this, but we do believe that the schedules that you guys have will provide you with a strong foundation and really a sense of preparedness for finishing well. So let's take a look. This is too small to read, and it didn't end up in your packets because for some reason it didn't print right. But it's actually a letter from our president, the president of Ronald Blue, former president, I should say. He's now the vice chairman of the board, protector of our culture. which corporate culture is super important. Culture trumps strategy, as we say. So he's in charge of that. But he was going to his son's wedding, and his brother, 50-year-old brother, was there and went out for a run and fell down dead of a heart attack. And his sister-in-law had no idea what to do, had no passwords to the computers, no idea what was where the assets were located, checking accounts, bill pay, really none of that. It took her a month just to get into the computer to figure out where all that stuff was. So he came back and said, hey, this isn't working. We got to put together something that we can hand to our clients that they can use to get ready for this transition. And again, going through this with my wife, it made a huge difference when she passed, knowing what she wanted. She wanted to be cremated, not buried. I didn't know all of the details for her obituary. Super helpful to have that filled out already, so then I could complete the obituary and get it published in the right places. So that's a little bit about why we're doing this. Uh-oh. Stephen. You know, we may not have it on the screen. Let me move over here. No, it's going to go back through the whole thing. Oh, there it is. Oh, sweet. Okay. So, what? There we go. So what's in the packet? We've got a section in there for your preferences. This is for you to record your funeral wishes and obituary information. If you're here with your spouse, you want to fill out one for each of you. There's a place for documents. This is just for where do you have all your records stored? Are they in a specific file? I know I have some clients, they call it the blue folder. All the major documents are in that, super organized. They would be the what Dave Ramsey would call the nerd, not the free spirit. But I was the nerd. My wife was a free spirit. But it's great because everything's in one place. You may want to keep it in a safe at home or in a safety deposit box. But where are all those documents located? Both the financial information as well as the wills. Important items to consider, just a list of other items to think about and pull together, depending on your family situation. There is a section in there on a timeline, just to give you an idea. What if you're an executor or personal representative, what are all the things that you want to pay attention to first? It's, again, a really emotional time that your family members are going through if it's your loss, and what do they need to do step by step. It's not a complete detailed list, but it's a good outline of the timeline of how to prioritize certain things. And then the executor duties, a listing of duties and responsibilities for the executor. Nothing for you to complete on a couple of these, but let's start with taking a look at this is the timeline, again, just more for reference. Obviously, you're not going through it right now, but if you do have to serve in that role, it can be helpful. Is there anything? We do want to make sure that that your family is focused on the decisions that need to be made in the short term and avoid making hasty long-term decisions until they're at their best. So when you do talk to your executor or personal representative, talk to them about getting counsel from family, friends. Jeff is available, or another trusted advisor to help them prioritize and really protect your estate. Documents. So as you can see, there's a long list of documents to pull together. The wills, living wills, healthcare power of attorney, financial and general power of attorney if you become disabled before you pass, trust documents, personal effects, how you want those to be disposed of, where do you want those to go, any letters that you may have to individuals that are going to receive the assets, and then lots of personal stuff: birth certificates, marriage license, adoption records. If you've lost a loved one, a spouse, husband or wife, then their death certificate. If you've been in the military, any military paperwork, discharge paperwork, passports, social security numbers, driver's license, just a lot to pull together and make sure that you have someplace safe. And then this is the place to write it down. Where did you put it all? So that your executor or personal representatives knows where to find that. Lots of times the attorneys will keep a copy of the will too. So if you even there's a place in here, section just for listing your advisors. That can be a good place for, if you want to just say, talk to the attorney. Go see the attorney for these documents. And that's a great place to start. Do you have a safety deposit box or a personal safe? If it's hiding somewhere in your closet, let them know. Financial records. Having a detailed list of all the sources of your income. This can be, again, because if you have it like I do, set up on a direct deposit, that the money's coming in from Social Security and a pension and an annuity or other locations, they have to let those people know. Your estate can't keep receiving that stuff. So just listing out, kind of nice, but they do take it back, unfortunately. But listing out all of those sources of income, making sure that you've listed out the titles or have some place that you have the titles of all of your documents, of all of your property, personal, your home. I actually was just realizing, can't believe I forgot this. I haven't changed the title on my house. I looked it up this morning on Zillow. It's got a little link to go out to the public, Snohomish County records, public records, and there's my wife's name still on our title. So if I go to sell my house, which I'm not planning on, but if I go to sell my house, I've got to get that changed in order to be able to sell my home. So make sure that you've taken care of that, or at least that you let them know where those titles are held. Your car, if you've got the title to your car, you want to make sure that that's in a safe place. Provide some details of ongoing contracts. If you have leased a car or rental contracts, partnerships or other shareholder agreements, those kinds of things, make sure that they know where those are. Insurance policies. I have a client that lost his wife now 2 years ago, and he's still finding insurance policies to submit to the insurance companies, and then he lost the check, but that's another story. But make sure that you have all of those in someplace safe and that they know where those are. And then tax records too. Finally, pins and passwords. I have one client, she's funny. She's a retired researcher from the UW, and she comes up with these amazing passwords that nobody will ever guess. I'm surprised she can keep them straight, but they're names of scientific things, so they're great. But she's a widow, and so she's sent them to me. I keep them password secured in her file so that if something happens to her, then there's somebody there that can come in and help her executor with getting into her computers and getting everything unlocked. And she'll send me an update from time to time. So make sure you don't write them down in this document. Number one, they're going to change. And number two, the document's not safe. So make sure they're written down in a safe place. I know my phone actually has my password keeper, and then there's just one password to keep, and it's got all my passwords inside of that. So that's one way to handle it. If you are proficient at the phone or need some help with that, we can do a class on that maybe. but that would be a great way to keep those passwords safe. List out all your advisors. If you do have attorney, financial advisor, insurance person. For us, as the financial advisor, we try to work with all of those. We try to be the quarterback in the role of a personal CFO for clients because their lives are pretty complicated and a lot of them are moving fast and dynamic. And so if we can be that point person and have that relationship with each one of their other professional advisors, that just simplifies things for them. But make sure you've listed them out and so that the personal representative can contact each one of them. Okay, personal preferences. This is where, if you guys do want to take some time to start filling this out now, again, the point of this time is meant to be a workshop. So if you guys want to take a little bit of time and start to fill these out, I'd encourage you to do so. Hopefully I haven't been talking too fast. The stuff that we've been through so far is stuff that I think you can go home and fill out. But even just taking a little bit of time, writing your name on the document. And then if you already have a person that is your person that you want to contact when something happens to you, let's go ahead and write that down. There's a place there for if you have already made arrangements, if you already have a funeral plot, or if you've already gone to the funeral home and prepaid for a gravesite, that's super important to include there. And if you have prepaid that, go ahead and attach a contract to this document when you're done with it. How many people, I was hoping Jeff would still be in the room, but how many people want to have a public viewing of their, not my personal preference, but there is that place that you want to check that box. You don't want your personal representative, your kids deciding whether to dress you up and do that, or if that's what you want, great. Especially if if you've been involved in the military and you're going to get to wear your uniform at that time and be on display. That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah.
Some of you guys know this from going to memorials here, but if you don't know, I just want you to know that you can do your memorials here. There is no cost to the family. Canyon Hills does not charge to do memorials here. The only thing your family would be liable for is if they want to do food with some type of reception, but we provide coffee, we provide water, we do not charge the family to do a memorial here.
And that was a huge blessing for me. We did bring in food and set it up there in the lobby just outside of this room, and it was perfect to be able to have people here. More people showed up than I expected, so they ended up opening up the main auditorium and broadcast it over there. They were filming it and recorded it, and the team here was amazing. The technology team did a great job. I was in the back, actually, with one of the technology guys scrambling minutes before the ceremony, working on the slideshow, but they were awesome and did a great job. And if you are a member here and can use them, it's great. Jeff even did our memorial, and it was he did a phenomenal job. So again, some places, if you do want that viewing, to fill out the personal accessories, and then your funeral service, go ahead and write down Jeff's name if you want. I'm sure he'll volunteer. But the name of the minister, if you want it here, go ahead and write in the address here for Canyon Hills. If you have been in the military, fraternal, lodge, etc., go ahead and include that. A flag, type of casket, all of that detail. Again, this is probably not something you've spent much time thinking about. Maybe you have, and you've got it all figured out, but most people haven't. So just taking the time to think through it, and maybe even praying through it too. There's some of these decisions that might need a little extra time with God to decide. Musicians, we actually, for my wife's memorial, she had a ton of favorite worship songs, and we just put those on and just played those over and over along with the slideshow. And that was actually something that, I forget which, it wasn't Pandora, it was one of the other music services. But my daughter and my niece and my sister-in-law collaborated on the music, and were able to pull together some different songs, which was a really cool way to pull in some help. And for your personal representative, they need all the help they can get. Eulogy. So I ended up actually having to write the eulogy, but I asked my brother-in-law to share it, which was great, and he did a great job. Thankfully, he's a pastor as well, so he was used to talking in front of people and knew my wife well. And then do you want any favorite scripture passages that to read? That can be, or poetry or something else that you want shared at your memorial. Cemetery. If you are working with a cemetery already, letting your personal representative know all the details about that cemetery. And then again, whether you want to be cremated or not. If you are cremated, burial, scattering. My wife and we love to camp in Bend, Oregon. It's where she wanted to be disposed of, I guess. So we'll be taking a trip down there this summer. If there is a lot that you've already picked out, then the location of that and some of the other details around that ceremony as well. Flowers. I highly recommend Bothell Floral, by the way. They did a great job for ours, and we had some beautiful flowers. But if you don't want flowers, if you'd rather have a donation in lieu of flowers, then making sure that people know that. Organ donation. In this case, my wife had cancer. We couldn't take advantage of that, but if there is the opportunity for organ donation, you can include those instructions. And then just anything else that's there. Let me flip forward there. There we go. Next, we have, would it be helpful to take some time? Do you guys want to take 5 minutes or just keep going? Okay, keep going. So next we're going to talk about the obituary. How many have written theirs? Yeah, 1, 2, maybe 1. I gotta admit, I can't. If my dad passes right now, I can't remember all this stuff, all the details of his life. So I've asked him and my stepmom and my mom to fill this out for my benefit, so that when it is time for them to go, then I'll be able to complete their obituary. So it takes some time to fill that one out. We figured it out for my wife. She'd filled out part of this, and then I got together with my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law, and we figured out the obituary information. But it'd be nice to have that all completed. Yeah?
With privacy issue these days, is there a minimum information, too much information, identity theft?
That is a concern. Yeah, and I did... I'm not an expert on it. I did read a little bit about it as I was trying to complete my wife's. That was something that came up of concern. Definitely questionable. I went ahead and included birth date and date of death, but there's some question about that. Maybe you just want to use the year of their birth rather than or yours rather than your birth date. That'd be an option. So yeah, if you are concerned about that, there are some ways to modify that. Still sharing enough information that people know who you were and enough about you to recognize that it's you, besides the picture. Yes? Oh yeah. The question was, with privacy issues, is there a concern about what information to share in the obituary? Yeah, which is a great question. That's going to be for the second one. Some other items to consider. Again, professional advisors, a lot of times they can help out a lot with the information that they've got. So making sure that you're listing those professional advisors, listing out an inventory of the really valuable stuff, wedding rings, anything else of real value that you want to go to a specific person, instead of allowing your kids to fight about it or your heirs to fight about it, making sure that it's clear who gets it. Or if you just want it sold and the proceeds given away, if you're concerned about that, then having those instructions, any antiques, special furniture, that kind of stuff. I will admit, we tend to get emotionally attached to stuff. And it's kind of funny how much value we put on stuff that our kids don't care about. They really don't. You know, even to the point of houses, believe it or not, I have a client that has a house up on Birch Bay, and they want to keep it in the family. And the kids are like, not really. Can we just take the money? So keep that in mind, too. It may just be simpler to find some place to sell it. I did have a client that had some valuables, jewelry, and some other collectibles that they were actually able to go to an auction house, and the auction house helped with selling those. And some of the stuff ended up being fairly valuable. It was really fun. They had a fun trip to New York. Distribution of household items. Again, if there are specific things that you want to go to people, if kids come through and let you know that there's stuff that they want, great. If not, if there's someplace you want it donated to, making sure that that's clear. Expenses. Maintain a list of expenses. I know none of us use a budget anymore. Well, maybe you do, but it's been hard. Trying to be a single dad and keep up with a budget is more challenging than I expected, but still helpful just for that personal representative to know the expenses. Deposits that are coming in, all of that can just show up on a bank statement. I just bank with just one bank, so that keeps it super simple. My credit cards and everything are just with one place. Contacts. This is a funny one. I've been thinking about this with my mom. I don't know who her friends are. Who would I contact if something happened to her? So list in some of your friends and loved ones, and keeping that in a place that you can make sure that they're aware of. I don't need to read through this whole list. Tax info would be another one. Genealogy. If you've taken time to know where you've come from and what your genealogy is, making sure that gets passed on to the next generation. I don't think we do a good enough job with that, frankly, of letting people know who came before us. How many of you know who your great-grandmother was? About half. Yeah. I wonder if you asked your grandkids if they would know who their great-grandmother was. Probably not enough. But yeah. And pets. How many of you have pets? Where do you want the pets to go if something happens to you? That's a tough one, actually. I don't have an answer for that. We have a dog and a cat, and obviously my kids are going to take them, but if they weren't around, I'm not sure what I'd do. And then here's just so for your awareness, a list of the executor's duties. So when you think about who you're choosing as your executor or personal representative, this is all the stuff that they're required to do when you pass away. So making sure that you've picked somebody that can be responsible in handling all this stuff, that has the time to do that. And again, that's where a professional trustee can come in and help too. Inventory, just a place to list valuables and any assets that you have that you want to make sure that they're aware of. Okay, yeah.
Where is it documented who the executor is?
So that's going to be in the will or the trust documents. That's right up front. They get named and given a certain amount of power to be able to serve in that role.
I have a will. I don't remember doing that part. I'll have to go look.
Yeah, definitely check. Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes your executor or personal representative will pass away. And typically you'll name a successor, and maybe even two successors, depending on whether they want to serve. We have lots of clients that will name their kids as the primary executor, and then name us as the contingent executor or trustee. That way, if the kids are busy and they just decide, we just don't want to do this, we don't have time, we'd rather pay somebody to do that for us, then we can step in. And we have the power to be able to, within that document, to be able to do that. And there's specific language that we give to attorneys to be able to do that. Yes?
Do you have a range, like how much it costs to have you do it instead of a family member?
Yeah, there is a minimum fee. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking it's $5,000 for us to do it. It's usually 2% of the asset value to do that. And that's a pretty common number. Yes?
Is there a usual compensation amount for an executor who is not a professional?
That is up to you. Yeah, I actually was having this conversation with a client yesterday who settled his mom and his grandfather's estate. And it's just he and his sister. He's a pastor and she's a missionary overseas. And so we were talking, should he actually take any kind of fee for the amount of time that he spent working on that? And I would talk with an attorney to see what's appropriate there. I would still think something in that 1% to 2% of the asset values would be a fair amount if they choose to. He had chosen not to take anything, and the estate was fairly large, roughly $5 million. And so he could have taken up to $100,000 as a fee for himself to do that. He chose not to. There was about $20,000 left in an estate account that he was debating, and half of it was his. So his fee was going to be about $10,000 if he took his sister's portion to compensate him. But again, it's a lot of time. So yeah, coming up with an amount that's reasonable, and you can include that in those estate documents. Great question. Yes.
So when you run out of successor executor, can the one that's listed just refer to you as the contingent? Or do you have to be named?
They can hire somebody to do that. It'll be a court documentation. They'll have to go and let the courts know that they are transferring that power to somebody else. So that other entity has, person or entity has that power to be able to serve in that role. Yeah. Yes.
Could we have a copy of the first two sections that are not in here, that you explained?
Yes.
Yeah, if we could have a copy of it, maybe for our encore class.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, yeah,
Notes, but.
Yep. Yeah, I'll have Lisa make sure to make that available. It is in electronic form. All of the documents that we went through today, the PowerPoint presentation, and as well as the. Okay, and we'll figure that out. Lisa and I will figure that out. Yeah, yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Is that, I mean, how much somebody gets paid to be the executor, is that usually listed in the will or the documents? Because we were told that if we didn't keep track of the hours that we did, that we couldn't do that, even if the other people agreed.
Again, that's probably a legal question for an attorney. I would think that now that I think about it, I can't think of a time I've seen it in a will that they stated how much the executor would get paid. There usually is some kind of a clause that says they can receive fair compensation. So that would require keeping track of the hours to do that. And I know as a trust company, we don't actually have that fee stated in the trust documents for our clients, but something that would be a fee that we would charge as we take on that responsibility as the trustee in managing the assets. Yes.
On this form, one of the first things is the probate will. It sounds like everything needs to go through probate. Is that correct?
With a will, it does. Not all of it. Anything that has a beneficiary, any asset that has a beneficiary does not need to go through the probate process. That would be a retirement account, would have a beneficiary. You can also put a beneficiary on an individual account, investment account, or a bank account. It's called a transfer on death. It's a form that all of the institutions have you fill out if that's what you want to do. And that then bypasses the will. It's actually one of those things we have to be careful with clients. If they have a desire to leave a certain amount to kids, and they state that amount in the will, but then they do something different in their retirement account, the retirement account, the beneficiary information actually trumps the will. And that asset gets distributed to whoever's named as the beneficiary. You can also, there's a document we came across recently where you can list a transfer on death for a real estate property as well, and you can file that with the state. So there is a way to bypass the will where it doesn't have to go through probate, but any assets that aren't either in trust or have a beneficiary then do have to go through the probate process. In the case of my wife, we didn't have to go through court. There's another form that was called a small estate affidavit that we filled out in lieu of having to file with the courts and go through the lengthy probate process. Correct. We still have to file that small account affidavit or small estate affidavit. We had to file that, but we didn't have to go through the probate process. And partly because it's community property in the state of Washington, so all of those assets pass to me regardless not regardless, actually, she still has, her will stated that everything was going to go to me anyway, but as community property, there is joint ownership of those, and that allowed for us to use that small estate affidavit.
Anything over $100,000 has to go to probate that's not put in beneficiaries. I'm dealing with that with my dad.
Correct. Yep.
And do we need the community property form in the state of Washington?
So you don't. So two questions that were there just for everybody's sake. Anything over 100,000, you cannot use that small estate affidavit form. So if the estate's under 100,000, you can use that form for all of the assets that aren't being transferred by beneficiary. Anything over that, then you have to go through the probate process. The second part of that question was, sorry. The community property. You do not have to have a community property agreement. The state of Washington is a community property state. So any married spouses have 100% ownership. Each spouse has 100% ownership of that asset. There's some tax benefits to that, but it's funny that brokerages now have figured out that having 100% ownership, that means that each spouse actually does have the ability to determine where that goes. And so if it's not going to a spouse, it can go to somebody else, charity or to somebody else. And so they do look for that small estate affidavit or probate or another part of the estate settlement process for determining where the assets within a joint community property account can go. I ran into that with Schwab. They were kind of a pain and made me send them a couple extra forms, but yeah. Yes?
How much certain documents filling out needs to be done with a lawyer versus I can just go to the courthouse and file like that?
Yeah, so how much of the estates, and I think you're talking about the estate settlement process.
Yeah.
How much of that needs to be done with an attorney and how much can it be done on your own? I would say it depends on the complexity of the estate. If it's a fairly simple estate, most of it can be done without an attorney. If you have an attorney that you can still talk to and bounce ideas off of, that can be helpful. But if it's a fairly simple estate, I think you can do most of it on your own. If it's a little more complicated estate, then I would get the attorney involved. They are extremely helpful. Yeah, having done this, because they do this fairly often. Yes?
Complex is a very complex word. So
Yes.
What creates complexity?
Yeah, good question. I think the different types of assets create complexity in an estate. If there is, and the size of the estate creates some complexity. Different types of assets being, again, if you've got investment accounts and real estate and life insurance and annuities and there are multiple different types of assets that you're dealing with, that can create some complexity. If it's just a checking and savings account and maybe a retirement account, that would be fairly simple in my mind. But yeah, I think that's going to be, and it may be the abilities of the personal representative too that might contribute to whether or not they would think that the situation was complex or simple too. Yes.
Last year's taxes, my husband passed away last May.
Mm-hmm.
So I claim I always do the taxes. It's merit, right? I claim on the merit still. Income was different because
Last year, yes. And this does get into a little more detailed tax issue, but yes, for last year, the question was, husband passed away, filing the tax return, does she get to still file as married? For last year, and the answer is yes. For this year, it would be, for 2023 and moving forward, it's no. Yeah, yes.
If a person is married, their husband dies, they've got a home and other assets, and if they marry again, does that become community estate if they've got a will made before that that says things go to their kid?
No. Technically, no. If it's, yeah, the question is if the spouse passes away and you remarry, who owns the assets? If you own a home and your name's on that home, and you remarry, does that home automatically become? Depends on the title. Yeah, if you retitle that in a community property agreement as part of a marriage, if you were to file a community property agreement with the new spouse, then everything that you own would become community property. But if you're coming into the marriage with individual assets from a previous situation, then no, you can bring in inherited property or bring in your own individual property, and as long as the title doesn't change, then I don't think. Again, technical question for an attorney, but fairly certain that it wouldn't change. Yeah, and then your will would then determine where that asset goes. Yes. Yeah, you're likely to do a new will, would be my thought with the new spouse. And at that point, the attorney could provide some insights into whether or not it'd be worth setting those assets aside within a separate trust or some other vehicle for protecting that so that it goes to your heirs the way that you want.
Personal effects,
Mm-hmm.
do I need to list everything goes to who, or could I just say it's all divided among the children? Or does it have to be sold off and paid at the
Yeah, that's up to you. How you want that handled. If you think the kids are going to fight about certain items, then I'd probably list them out, and then have a conversation. This is the one thing I forgot to talk about. We not frequently, but we do offer for our clients when we go through an estate planning process, and we get to the end of the estate planning process, and they've figured out where everything's going to go. We'll invite the family members and do a family meeting. And let them know. If you do have a will or an estate document, have you ever sat down with your family and told them what's in it? Most people will say no, that they haven't. And so actually doing a family meeting and having communication around this issue, I'm sure, without a doubt, that your kids have thought about it.
Well, the question goes more to whether to have a probate or a trust. If you don't name the personal asset effects in the trust, then it goes to probate to be liquidated, paid off the debtors before the funds can be dispersed. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's going to be in the case of a trust, though, too. If there are debts, then assets need to be liquidated to cover those debts within a living trust. The value of listing those personal items, and I was thinking more personal items in a home. Again, it depends on the value of those personal items and whether your kids want them and whether there may be conflict with those. But yeah, if there are items that you want to make sure go to a certain place, certain person, then listing those out. And am I answering your question right?
It's more from the court.
More from the court side.
My experience
Okay.
being a widow, the court kind of takes power over the deceased.
Yes.
And so they would say, those are his things, you need to liquidate them first. It's like, I don't even have a choice to keep them if they're not in the trust. But now you're saying, if it is in the trust, I still need to liquidate them.
Well, as a trust, the trust is still going to be responsible for settling the debts of the deceased. So there would be more autonomy for the trustee to decide which assets need to be liquidated. The court then wouldn't be giving you that information. But I think I'm getting into more of an attorney's professional expertise and a little outside of mine on the probate process. Yeah. Yes.
In my trust, we have said that all 4 kids get equal amount.
Mm-hmm.
But I have also, designated my niece as a beneficiary on certain things.
Mm-hmm.
She would get those, and then her equal portion of the trust? Or would those where she's beneficiary have to also go in the trust? I need all 4 of them.
If she's named as beneficiary, then is she named as a beneficiary of the trust, or just of the other
trust.
assets? Okay.
And then also like an IRA
Mhm.
given to her.
Yeah, then she would get both.
She would get both.
Yeah,
So
the
that-
IRA would not be included in the trust
Okay.
assets.
Because I have her as a beneficiary.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
You want to be sure and get along with all your relatives that are involved.
Yes.
And I'll give you an example.
Yes.
My wife's brothers in the estate, it was a pretty good sized estate. He sued the estate 5 times.
Oh.
That took $600,000 out of the estate
Oh.
for lawyer's fees.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to repeat that, I don't know if everybody heard, but making sure you get along with your family members is helpful. A brother that sued the estate 5 times and took $600,000 out of the estate just in attorney's fees. Sad.
I got 5 brothers, and we never had one argument with my parents' estate, not one.
Yeah,
But most people aren't like that.
sadly. Yeah. And that again comes back to the reason for 2 things. One, making sure you get along, and you make sure you communicate this stuff and set expectations for what you want to have done and why.
Yeah, you got to write it down.
Yeah.
Everything's got to be written down.
Yeah. Real quick, and then I'll go back here.
Okay, I've heard that a will can be contested, but a trust cannot. Is that true?
Again, a legal question. I don't think a trust can be contested. It's it's because it's a legal entity that owns it, and as long as the assets. The hard part with trust is funding them correctly. Most people will get this great trust document, nice, big, beautiful binder, lots of paper. I think the attorneys get paid by the word, so there's a whole bunch in there. But yeah, then they don't fund it correctly, so they don't actually take the assets.
Sure your assets are in the trust name.
Yeah, there is what's called a pour over will that does allow for any assets that didn't make it into the trust to be poured over into that trust. But yeah, typically trust, it's pretty hard to contest a trust. Wills then can be. Was the person in their right mind when they wrote that? Yeah. Yes.
This kind of piggybacks what she said. A living trust. So if you set up a living trust, then when the person passes, then tell me more about that. How that works.
Yeah. Yeah, the living trust is just doing that probate process outside of the courts, so it doesn't go through the courts, and doing it before you die. It's taking all your assets and putting them in this separate entity with a document that then governs where that stuff goes. And so it's a lot of work. It's a higher cost. Relative to the will and the probate process, it may be less, but then that's after you're gone and you don't need the money anyway. So it depends. But yeah, the living trust is just a lot of work before you die to make sure that the assets are set up to go to where you want them to. The other benefit of the trust is if you do become disabled, you can give somebody else authority over the assets to manage those. And again, it doesn't have to go through the courts. That's governed by that trust document as a successor trustee.
Does the living trust provide some privacy?
Yeah, it is private. It's not a public document. It's public in that all the assets get named in the name of the trust, and typically that documentation will have the names of the trustees, but that's the extent of it. There isn't any description then to anybody else publicly of where those assets go. Yes?
I have a daughter that lives overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything special that I need to do in my will?
So the question is, a daughter lives overseas. Anything special you need to do? Is she still a U.S. citizen?
Yes.
Um,
But doesn't intend to return. She'll be living.
yeah, off the top of my head, I don't think so. I have clients that actually have kids living overseas. And they're going to have to come back to complete a lot of the work. I would suspect it'd be hard to do everything from overseas, but yeah, there shouldn't be any problem with them living overseas and still serving in that role.
She's not going to be the executive.
Okay. In terms of the distribution of assets to her overseas, that gets into a level of tax and legal that is above my pay grade, too.
A person or reference that I would go to?
The complicating factors are usually around asset transfers between countries. And let me think about that one. Give me your name afterwards, and I'll think about it and see if I can come up with a resource for you. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Going back to the paying of debts after you die. So if we have everything as beneficiary, so I know that dealt with that already, that just automatically goes to the beneficiary accounts, which do all beneficiaries, that's great. But then if there's still debts to for the estate, should we be putting something aside that's saying that this asset can be used by the executor to pay the debts, and then upon whatever's left, that can be divided or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just for everybody's sake, if there are debts and most of the assets are transferring by beneficiary, should you be setting aside some asset to then cover that debt? My first thought goes to usually you have like an insurance policy to do that, but if you don't have the insurance policy and it's a little hard to get insured depending on your health, then yes, figuring out a way to set aside some resources for covering that debt. That can be a complicated one too, because there may be medical costs at the end that are more than the value of those assets, and figuring out what that is beforehand. Yeah.
You know, it'd be 6, 7, 8, 9 months later.
Yeah.
And usually getting bills still.
Yeah.
I just got one from my mom.
Oh my goodness. Yikes. Yeah, that seems, I think, beyond the reasonable time. Oh no. Yes.
Talking about transfer on debt,
Uh-huh.
you mentioned possibility of real estate being transferred on debt. So if you set up your assets, so everything's transferred on debt, can you avoid both probate and a living trust?
Yeah, technically. Yeah, it's still, yeah, because at that, well, the probate is still gonna, your total value of your estate, if it's still over 100,000, because it's not dependent on what's left in the estate that didn't get distributed by beneficiary. It's actually the total value, including the retirement accounts and checking accounts and everything. If that's, yeah, and everything that's if it's worth more than 100,000, it still does have to go through probate, even though it gets transferred by beneficiary. yeah, there still is that public declaration of this person passed away, and if you're a debtor, then you need to come to the court and be paid out. I don't know how that's handled legally with those assets if they were distributed to beneficiaries already, how those get pulled back by the debtors, but there still would need to be some kind of a process for doing that. Yeah, the laws are, yeah, it's pretty hard to get around paying off your debtors at the end of life. So I suspect that they have a process for pulling that back in some fashion. Yeah. Give it all away would be one option. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
We discovered that you have to be careful, like if you're doing stuff by beneficiary, don't forget that you have all this stuff, and especially if you have a house and they can't sell it right away, there's all those costs that you have to have money for.
Yes.
Otherwise they're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, all the selling costs for those transactions. Yeah, usually the asset should be able to cover that, but yeah, you do still have to. And for example, with this client I was talking to yesterday, he's held back about $20,000 after essentially everything's been taken care of, just in case. Taxes, filing that final estate tax return, there still are those things that do carry on, and that's why the process. We have a great document that outlines the process for estate settlement, and it can be 18 to 24 months to get that whole process done. It's not a quick process. Yeah, and that's for both will or trust. It can take some time. Yeah. Okay, so next steps. Let's locate and review your will or your estate documents, your trusts. If they are obsolete, make sure to meet with an estate attorney right away. Put the final copies. It's good to put them in two places. Safety deposit box and a secure filing cabinet at home, or keep them with your advisor and the safety deposit box or a safe at home. Consider giving while you're living if the assets that you own today exceed your needs. The fun part about what I get to do every day as a financial advisor is develop our client's financial plans and help show them how much is enough. And if they know how much is enough to meet all of their needs out to age 100, if they have more than enough, then they get to have the joy of being able to give some of that away. And whether that's to charity or their kids now, start to test their kids before they receive an inheritance. Make sure that they're prepared as stewards of those resources. Also, it can be helpful on estate tax if you have a larger estate to do some charitable giving or to transfer some assets to kids before passing. Okay, I think that was it. Again, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate your time today. I hope this was helpful. Yes? Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that. I went through that a little fast. I'll just leave that up. Yes? If you guys want to receive the documents that we looked through today, give your information to Lisa and email, or if we need to get those printed, then we'll figure out a way to get those printed and get those to you.
So your organization helps hiring clients.
Our firm actually works with clients that have kind of middle America all the way to billionaires.
Because I need someone to look at my living trust
Mm-hmm.
and help me change it. Who would I go to? Like you, or?
I would love to have that conversation to start with, and then I can figure out if I'm the right person or if there would be another division in the company that would be a better fit.
Okay.
Yeah, depending on your needs.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, Chris Scotchler, loved being with you guys today. If there's anything I can do to help you out personally, I'd love to do that. I'll stick around. I did leave some business cards in the back if you want one. I brought a couple of our newsletters from last fall that talk a little bit about the firm and our perspective on the economy and investing and how we do that. But again, it's been a pleasure to be with you guys. Thank you very much.